What are you doing here? I don't allow anyone to clean my office tonight.
Ma'am, I clean all the offices on Friday evenings. I can come back later if you want.
Old Veteran was mocked as a janitor until they learned he once commanded 500 soldiers. When the new principal at Lincoln High School called 67-year-old janitor Robert Bobby Martinez just the help, she had no idea she was insulting a decorated Army colonel who had led the 82nd Airborne Division through 3 combat deployments. But when a visiting general recognized him, everything changed in an instant. Lincoln High School in suburban Phoenix buzzed with the energy of 2,000 students navigating the hallways between classes. The sprawling campus, built in the 1980s, showed its age in worn linoleum floors, flickering fluorescent lights, and the constant need for maintenance that kept the custodial staff busy from dawn to dusk. In the administrative wing, where polished trophy cases displayed decades of academic and athletic achievements, the contrast between the school's proud history and its current struggles with budget cuts was most apparent. It was here that the collision between past and present would soon unfold in the most unexpected way. Bobby Martinez pushed his custodial cart through the hallways with the same precision he had once used to move troops across hostile terrain. At 67, his salt and pepper hair was cropped in a military fade that he maintained himself, and his khaki work uniform was always pressed and clean despite the demanding nature of his job. His weathered hands, scarred from years of combat and manual labor, moved efficiently as he mopped floors, emptied trash cans, and maintained the school that had become his post-retirement mission. Few people at Lincoln High knew that Bobby had served 30 years in the Army, rising from an enlisted soldier to colonel before retiring in 2010. His modest apartment was decorated with commendations from 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, photos with generals and politicians, and a Bronze Star with V device for valor. But Bobby had never mentioned his military service to his co-workers, preferring to let his work ethic speak for itself. The transition from commanding 500 paratroopers to cleaning classrooms had been difficult, but Bobby found purpose in maintaining a clean, safe environment for students to learn. Every mission matters, he would tell himself as he worked applying the same attention to detail that had made him a respected military leader. Dr. Victoria Sterling had arrived at Lincoln High 3 months earlier with an MBA from Harvard and ambitious plans to transform the struggling school. At 42, she was young for a principal, having fast-tracked her career through administrative positions at private schools where custodial work was contracted out to invisible service companies. Her corner office was decorated with motivational posters about excellence and achievement, and she ran the school like a corporate boardroom focused on test scores, efficiency metrics, and budget optimization. Dr. Sterling viewed the custodial staff as overhead to be minimized rather than valued team members, and she made no effort to learn their names or acknowledge their contributions to the school's daily operations. Bobby's first encounter with Dr. Sterling set the tone for their relationship. He had been cleaning the main office after hours when she arrived to retrieve files for a weekend meeting. Finding Bobby emptying wastebaskets in her office, she had snapped, "What are you doing in here? I didn't authorize anyone to clean my office tonight." "Ma'am, I clean all the offices on Friday evenings," Bobby replied respectfully, his military bearing evident even in his custodial uniform. "I can come back later if you prefer. In the future, check with my secretary before entering my office." Dr. Sterling said dismissively, "and make sure you don't touch anything on my desk. Some of us have important work to do." Bobby nodded politely and left. But the interaction stung. In the Army, he had been respected for his leadership and dedication. Here, he was treated as invisible at best, an inconvenience at worst. The pattern continued over the following weeks. Dr. Sterling would walk past Bobby in the hallways without acknowledgement, refer to him as the janitor when speaking to others, and generally treat him as part of the building's fixtures rather than a human being deserving of basic respect. While Dr. Sterling ignored Bobby, many students had developed genuine affection for the quiet custodian who always had time to help them. When freshman Maria Santos dropped her books, Bobby was there to help her pick them up. When senior Jake Thompson was struggling with college applications, Bobby had quietly encouraged him to persevere. "Mr. Martinez is cool," Maria told her friends. "He never makes you feel bad when you accidentally make a mess, and he always asks how your day is going." Bobby had a particular soft spot for students who reminded him of the young soldiers he had once led. He saw potential in kids that others had written off, offering quiet encouragement and sometimes slipping a few dollars to students who couldn't afford lunch. The students noticed Bobby's military bearing, the way he stood at attention during the Pledge of Allegiance, how he always removed his cap when the flag passed during assemblies, and the respectful way he interacted with visiting veterans during school events. "There's something different about Mr. Martinez," observed Senior Class President Ashley Chen. "He carries himself like someone who's been in charge of important things." The situation reached a crisis point during a faculty meeting in November. Dr. Sterling was discussing budget cuts and efficiency improvements when she made a comment that would change everything. "We need to examine all our expenditures," she announced to the assembled teachers and staff. "For example, do we really need a full-time custodian when we could contract the work out for half the cost? Some positions are just overhead that don't contribute to our educational mission." Bobby was in the hallway outside the meeting room replacing burned-out light bulbs when he heard the comment. Several teachers shifted uncomfortably, knowing that Bobby was within earshot and that his work was essential to the school's daily operations. English teacher Mrs. Rodriguez spoke up, "Dr. Sterling, Mr. Martinez does excellent work and is very popular with the students. I don't think replacing him would be wise." "Mrs. Rodriguez, I appreciate your sentiment, but we need to make decisions based on data, not emotions," Dr. Sterling replied. "The janitor is easily replaceable. We need to focus our resources on positions that actually matter." The dismissive tone and casual cruelty of referring to Bobby as the janitor, while he was within earshot, created a moment of uncomfortable silence in the room. Word of Dr. Sterling's comments spread quickly through the school's teacher network. Many educators who had worked with Bobby for years were outraged by the principal's dismissive attitude toward a man they respected and valued. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had taught at Lincoln High for 20 years, began quietly organizing support for Bobby. "That man has more dignity and class than anyone in this building," she told her colleagues. "The way Dr. Sterling talks about him is disgraceful." The teachers began paying closer attention to Bobby's interactions with students and his contributions to the school community. They noticed how he stayed late to help set up for school events, how he always volunteered for extra duties during parent-teacher conferences and how students gravitated toward him for advice and encouragement. Bobby Martinez is more of an educator than half the people with teaching certificates, observed Coach Williams, who had seen Bobby mentoring struggling students in the hallways. He teaches respect, work ethic, and dignity by example every single day. The teachers decided to document Bobby's contributions to present to the school board if Dr. Sterling followed through on her threat to eliminate his position. They had no idea they were about to discover something that would change their entire perspective on the quiet custodian. Mrs. Rodriguez's research into Bobby's background began innocently enough. She wanted to write a letter of recommendation highlighting his years of service to the school. But when she started digging into his employment records, she discovered something unexpected. Bobby's application listed U.S. Army retired under previous employment, but provided no details about his rank or service record. Curious, Mrs. Rodriguez asked her husband, a Navy veteran, to help her research Bobby's military background. What they discovered was extraordinary. Colonel Robert Martinez had commanded the 1st Battalion 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne Division. His service record included 3 combat deployments, multiple commendations for leadership under fire, and recognition as one of the Army's most effective battalion commanders. This man led 500 paratroopers in some of the most dangerous operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Mrs. Rodriguez's husband explained, "He's not just a veteran. He's a genuine war hero who commanded respect at the highest levels of the military." The teachers were stunned. The quiet custodian they had known for years was actually a decorated colonel who had led men in combat and earned the respect of generals and politicians. Armed with this information, the teachers developed a plan to honor Bobby and educate Dr. Sterling about the man she had so casually dismissed. The upcoming Veterans Day Assembly provided the perfect opportunity. Mrs. Rodriguez contacted the local Veterans of Foreign Wars post and discovered that several members had served under Bobby's command. They were eager to participate in honoring their former colonel, though they were surprised to learn he was working as a school custodian. "Colonel Martinez was the finest officer I ever served under," said Sergeant Major retired James Wilson. "He saved my life in Fallujah and the lives of dozens of other soldiers. If he's being disrespected, we need to set the record straight." The teachers also reached out to local media, sensing that Bobby's story would resonate with the community. The contrast between his distinguished military service and his humble current position highlighted important questions about how society values different types of work and treats its veterans. Coach Williams suggested inviting Bobby to speak at the Veterans Day Assembly, but Mrs. Rodriguez had a better idea. "Let's surprise him," she said. "Bobby would never agree to be honored publicly. He's too modest. But if we present him with recognition, he can't refuse. Maybe we can show everyone who he really is." The week before Veterans Day, the teachers worked secretly to organize a tribute that would honor Bobby while educating the entire school community about his service and sacrifice. They contacted his former unit, gathered testimonials from soldiers who had served under his command, and prepared a presentation that would reveal the true measure of the man they had known only as a custodian. Dr. Sterling focused on test scores and budget meetings, paid little attention to the Veterans Day Assembly planning. She viewed it as a routine school event, that required minimal administrative oversight. Bobby continued his daily routine, unaware that his colleagues were preparing to transform his life. He cleaned classrooms, maintained equipment, and interacted with students with the same quiet dignity he had always shown. Several teachers noticed him polishing the school's memorial plaque honoring alumni who had died in military service, a task he performed with particular care. He honors those who didn't come home, Mrs. Rodriguez observed, while never seeking recognition for his own service. The stage was set for a Veterans Day assembly that would become the most memorable event in Lincoln High School's history, and Dr. Sterling was about to learn a lesson in leadership respect and the true meaning of service. The crisis erupted 2 days before the planned Veterans Day assembly when Dr. Sterling called Bobby into her office for what she described as a performance evaluation. Bobby arrived promptly, his work uniform clean and pressed, carrying himself with the dignity that had defined his entire adult life. "Mr. Martinez," Dr. Sterling began without looking up from her paperwork, "I've been reviewing our custodial operations, and I have some concerns about efficiency and cost-effectiveness." Bobby stood at attention, waiting for her to continue. His military training had taught him to listen carefully before responding, especially when dealing with superior officers. Though he struggled to view Dr. Sterling as deserving of that respect. "Frankly, I'm not sure we're getting adequate value from your position," she continued, finally looking up with a dismissive expression. "Your work is adequate, but we could hire someone younger and more energetic for significantly less money. Someone who understands that this is just a cleaning job, not a career." The words hit Bobby like physical blows. After 30 years of military service and 5 years of dedicated work at Lincoln High, he was being reduced to just a cleaning job by someone who had never served anything larger than her own ambition. "Ma'am, I believe my work speaks for itself," Bobby replied quietly, his voice steady despite the humiliation burning in his chest. "Your work is fine for what it is," Dr. Sterling said with a condescending smile. "But let's be honest, you're a janitor, not a teacher or administrator. You don't contribute to our educational mission." The situation escalated when Dr. Sterling decided to use Bobby as an example during a staff meeting about operational efficiency. With Bobby cleaning nearby classrooms, she gathered the teachers to discuss budget cuts and personnel decisions. "We need to think strategically about every position," she announced to the assembled faculty. "Take our custodial staff, for example. Mr. Martinez seems like a nice enough man, but we're paying him a full-time salary with benefits for work that could be done by a part-time contractor for half the cost." Mrs. Rodriguez tried to interrupt, but Dr. Sterling continued her critique. "I know some of you have sentimental attachments to long-term employees, but we can't let emotions drive business decisions. The janitor is friendly with students, but that's not his job. His job is to clean, and anyone can push a mop." The teachers exchanged uncomfortable glances, knowing that Bobby could hear every word through the thin classroom walls. The casual cruelty of Dr. Sterling's assessment was made worse by her tone. She was discussing a human being's livelihood and dignity as if he were a piece of equipment to be replaced. "Furthermore," Dr. Sterling continued, "I've noticed that Mr. Martinez sometimes engages in lengthy conversations with students. While I'm sure he means well, we need to maintain appropriate boundaries. Students should be focusing on their studies, not chatting with the help." The phrase, The help created a moment of stunned silence in the room. Several teachers started to object, but Dr. Sterling cut them off. "I've made my decision. Mr. Martinez's position will be eliminated at the end of the semester. We'll contract out custodial services and use the savings for educational programs." In the hallway, Bobby stopped cleaning and stood perfectly still, absorbing the full impact of what he had just heard. Not only was he losing his job, but his character and contributions were being dismissed as worthless by someone who had never taken the time to know him. That evening, Bobby sat in his small apartment surrounded by the memories of a lifetime of service. His Bronze Star citation lay on the kitchen table next to his termination notice, a stark contrast between recognition for valor and dismissal for inadequacy. For the first time since retiring from the Army, Bobby questioned his worth and purpose. The woman who was supposed to lead Lincoln High School had reduced him to a replaceable commodity, someone whose decades of leadership and sacrifice meant nothing in the face of budget calculations. Bobby picked up his phone to call Mrs. Rodriguez and tell her he wouldn't be attending the Veterans Day assembly. The last thing he wanted was to be in a room full of people who had heard Dr. Sterling's assessment of his value. But as he started to dial, Bobby's eyes fell on a photo from his last deployment. 500 paratroopers standing at attention, looking to him for leadership and guidance. Those soldiers had trusted him with their lives, and he had never let them down. "One more mission," Bobby said to himself, straightening his shoulders. "I'll finish this mission with dignity." Unknown to Bobby, Mrs. Rodriguez and her fellow teachers had been working frantically to prepare a Veterans Day tribute that would honor his service while educating the entire school community about the man they had dismissed as just a janitor. The teachers had contacted Bobby's former unit and discovered that several of his soldiers lived in the Phoenix area. Sergeant Major James Wilson, now a successful business owner, had immediately agreed to attend the assembly. "Colonel Martinez saved my life in Fallujah," Wilson told Mrs. Rodriguez over the phone. "He led from the front, never asked his soldiers to do anything he wouldn't do himself. If some pencil pusher is disrespecting him, we need to set the record straight." The teachers also reached out to local media, and Channel 12 News agreed to cover the story of a decorated war hero working as a school custodian. The contrast between Bobby's distinguished military service and his humble current position highlighted important questions about how society values different types of work. Most importantly, they had prepared a presentation featuring Bobby's military service record testimonials from soldiers who had served under his command and documentation of his contributions to Lincoln High School over the past 5 years. As the Veterans Day assembly approached, Bobby wrestled with whether to attend. Dr. Sterling's words had cut deeper than any enemy fire he had faced in combat, and the prospect of sitting in an auditorium where everyone had heard her dismiss him as worthless felt unbearable. Maybe she's right, Bobby thought as he looked at his reflection in his bathroom mirror. Maybe I am just a janitor now. Maybe my service doesn't matter anymore. But as he prepared for what he assumed would be his last day at Lincoln High School, Bobby made a decision that reflected the character that had made him a respected military leader. He would attend the assembly not for himself, but to honor the other veterans who would be recognized. A soldier doesn't abandon his post, Bobby reminded himself, putting on his best civilian clothes. even when the mission gets difficult. The Lincoln High School auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and community members for the annual Veterans Day Assembly. Dr. Sterling sat in the front row checking her phone and looking impatient to get through what she viewed as a routine school event. Bobby entered quietly and took a seat in the back, hoping to remain invisible during the ceremony. He had no idea that Mrs. Rodriguez had been watching for him and had already signaled to the other teachers that their plan could proceed. The assembly began with the usual presentations: student essays about veterans, a performance by the school choir, and recognition of local veterans in attendance. Bobby applauded politely, grateful that the focus was on other people's service rather than his own situation. But then Mrs. Rodriguez took the microphone, and Bobby sensed that something unexpected was about to happen. Today, we want to honor a very special veteran, Mrs. Rodriguez announced, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. Someone who has served our country with distinction and continues to serve our school community with the same dedication and integrity he showed in uniform. Bobby felt a growing sense of unease as Mrs. Rodriguez continued. This man commanded 500 paratroopers of the 82nd Airborne Division through 3 combat deployments. He earned the Bronze Star for valor, multiple commendations for leadership under fire, and the respect of generals and enlisted soldiers alike. The auditorium fell silent as students and faculty began to realize that Mrs. Rodriguez was describing someone they knew. For the past 5 years, this decorated colonel has worked at our school, not seeking recognition or special treatment, but simply continuing his mission of service. He has mentored our students, maintained our facilities with pride, and demonstrated every day what true leadership looks like. Dr. Sterling looked confused, unsure where this presentation was heading. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Colonel Robert Martinez, United States Army retired, the man some of you know as our custodian. The auditorium erupted as Mrs. Rodriguez called Bobby to the stage. Students who had known him only as the friendly janitor stood and applauded, finally understanding why he had always carried himself with such dignity and purpose. Sergeant Major Wilson took the microphone and shared stories of Bobby's leadership in combat. Colonel Martinez led from the front, Wilson told the stunned audience. He never asked his soldiers to take risks he wouldn't take himself. He saved my life and the lives of dozens of other paratroopers. As Bobby reluctantly approached the stage, the entire auditorium rose in a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Students who had never paid attention to the quiet custodian now saw him in an entirely new light. Dr. Sterling sat frozen in her seat, her face pale as she realized the magnitude of her mistake in dismissing a decorated war hero as worthless. When the applause finally died down, Bobby took the microphone with the same calm authority he had once used to address his troops before dangerous missions. "Thank you for this recognition," he said, his voice steady and strong. "But I want you to understand something important. Every job has dignity, if you do it with integrity. I've been proud to serve this school and these students just as I was proud to serve my country." He looked directly at Dr. Sterling as he continued. "Leadership isn't about the title you hold or the office you occupy. It's about how you treat people, especially those who can't do anything for you in return." The message was clear to everyone in the auditorium. Bobby had just delivered a master class in leadership and dignity to the woman who had dismissed him as replaceable. The assembly concluded with the presentation of a plaque honoring Bobby's military service and his contributions to Lincoln High School. But the real victory was the respect and recognition he had finally received from his community. The Veterans Day Assembly video went viral within hours, shared across social media platforms with captions like, "Decorated war hero working as school janitor teaches principle about real leadership." The story was picked up by national news outlets, turning Bobby Martinez into an overnight symbol of dignity, service, and the value of honest work. Dr. Sterling faced immediate backlash from the school board, parents, and the community. Her dismissive treatment of a decorated veteran became a public relations nightmare for the school district. Within 48 hours, she issued a public apology and reversed her decision to eliminate Bobby's position. Local businesses began offering Bobby job opportunities with higher pay and better benefits, but he chose to remain at Lincoln High School. "This is where I'm needed," he told reporters. "These students are my mission now." The school board voted to rename the custodial department the Facilities Management Department and gave Bobby the title of Director of Facilities, along with a significant raise and expanded responsibilities for mentoring students interested in military service. Bobby's story sparked a national conversation about how society values different types of work and treats its veterans. The hashtag #RespectAllService began trending, with people sharing stories of essential workers who deserved recognition and dignity. Lincoln High School established the Colonel Martinez Leadership Academy, a program that taught students about servant leadership and the importance of treating all people with respect, regardless of their job title or social status. Bobby became a sought-after speaker at schools and veteran organizations, sharing his message that true leadership is about character, not position. His story was featured in leadership textbooks and military training programs as an example of how to maintain dignity and purpose in any circumstance. Dr. Sterling eventually resigned and moved to another state, but not before implementing new policies requiring administrators to learn about and respect all school employees. The Sterling incident became a cautionary tale in educational leadership programs about the importance of treating all team members with dignity and respect. 1 year after the Veterans Day Assembly, Bobby stood in his newly renovated office looking at the photos on his wall, images from his military service alongside pictures of Lincoln High School students he had mentored. His Bronze Star sat next to letters of thanks from students who had gone on to college and successful careers. A knock on his door interrupted his reflection. Maria Santos, now a college freshman studying education, had returned to visit. "Colonel Martinez," she said with a smile, "I wanted to thank you again for believing in me when no one else did. You taught me that it's not what job you do, but how you do it that matters." Bobby smiled, remembering the scared freshman who had dropped her books in the hallway years ago. "You taught me something too, Maria. You reminded me that every student deserves someone who believes in them." As Maria left, Bobby returned to his work, not because he was just a janitor, but because he was a leader who understood that true service comes in many forms and that dignity is earned through character, not titles. They mocked him as a janitor, but he taught them what real leadership looks like.